Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with Sean Kanan, author, actor, Emmy-award winning producer, and founder of Bad Boy Hot Sauce. Welcome, Sean.
Debra, thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. You're like everywhere.
I'm kind of a busy guy. But it's like that old adage, if you do what you love, it doesn't seem like you're working. And I'm very busy, but I love what I do. I do a lot of different things. I'm passionate about all of them. And I'm very blessed.
Well, I am blessed that you also have a hot sauce because it gives me a reason to talk to you.
Yeah.
Most people know you from TV,
Yeah.
movies,
hmm
book. You've got a new TED. Where do people recognize you the most from?
well, I first of all, I live in Los Angeles and like nobody cares. I mean, I get recognized when I'm at airports, because it's such a confluence of people from all over the world and in Las Vegas. But generally speaking, I have a very normal, anonymous life, which is great. I think I have just enough opportunity to kind of play TV star every once in a while, that's fun. But my life is it's pretty normal, which is a good thing.
And I was having lunch with a friend on Friday, and somebody walked by, and she goes, "I know it's a celebrity, and I can't place her." And then we went back to eating. I mean, that is that just like your life?
Well, my celebrity has increased because it used to be, "Don't you shop at my market? I know you." Or, "Don't you work out at my gym?" Or, "You look like that guy." It's not kind of an everyday thing that I get recognized, which is, fine.
You're very well known in the soap world. Yeah, we were talking before. Yes, my day job on Bold and the Beautiful, amazing. But I
Well, I
feel
want to
like
clarify though that when I said that's my day job, I say that only with, reverence, affection, and gratitude. So I don't want anyone thinking that I'm being dismissive of the amazing opportunity that I have to work on the number one, uh, it's the number one daytime drama in the world. It's in the Guinness World Book of Records. And so, I always joke, if I've had one really great talent in my career, it's grabbing onto coattails bigger than me. When I first started out, I got on General Hospital, which had been around for decades. And then to get on The Bold and Beautiful, which is syndicated in more than 40 countries. And of course, Cobra Kai, which is the number one show in the world when it comes out. So I seem to have either been very lucky or maybe that's an actual niche talent that I.
well, I said it with the utmost respect. I get to talk to cool people like you all the time, lucky me. And I think that gratitude piece, it has to be what keeps you working.
Absolutely. And gratitude's like a huge thing for me. I mean, I literally, the first thing I do when I wake up is I get on my knees and I thank my creator for five things. And I just believe that when you're living in gratitude, you're living in abundance. And when you're living in abundance, you're not living in scarcity. And for those people that know about the law of vibration, what you put out, the universe matches. And if you're putting out, "I live in abundance, I'm taken care of," it doesn't mean that you're not working like hell to achieve more, but you're in the present. You're appreciative for what you have, not thinking about the future of, what you need. Because when you use words like "I want," "I need," "I wish," and "I hope," it really is putting you in a place of scarcity. And unfortunately, the laws of the universe apply whether you believe in them or not. And, we learned from the time we were little that opposites attract. Well, that's only true with magnets. Like attracts like. And so if you're putting out a vibration of scarcity, you get more of it.
Absolutely. Or as I say, when you love what you do, it shows. When you don't love what you do, it really shows.
Yeah.
So very, very similar to that mentality. Where did all this come from for you? Was this part of the Jewish piece growing up, or just in this business, or what do you think?
I talk about this in my TEDx talk, which I hope everyone will watch. I had kind of a paradigm shift, a catharsis It started when I was about 50 years old. I was getting the 400th star on the Palm Springs Walk of Fame. It was Sean Kanan Day. There were celebrities saying nice things about me. The mayor was there giving me a key to the city. And to be honest, I kind of felt like a fraud because from the outside, it looked like I was a relatively successful guy. And from the inside, I knew that I was 40 pounds overweight. I was hanging on to a job by the skin of my teeth. And I was dealing with an addiction issue. And at one point, my wife, who is like my biggest cheerleader, said to me, I love you and I've put everything into this. And please tell me I didn't back the wrong horse. And it just hit me like a thunderbolt. And my wife never threatened to leave me. We didn't have infidelity. We didn't have things like that. But it was becoming painfully obvious that I had wandered into a wasteland of mediocrity and I didn't know how to get out of it. And, I'd like to tell you that I remedied all that in a New York minute. I didn't, but it started the process. And I quit drinking about I don't even keep track of it, but like 4.5 years ago. And all of the things that I wanted and couldn't seem to achieve, it was like the clouds parted. And once I became self-aware and once I got out of my own way, things that had previously seemed so difficult and elusive started to happen effortlessly. And when that happens, at least in my case, you want more of it. Not like I want more things. I want more material things. You want more of that really good feeling. And the best way to keep that good feeling is to give it away. And so I'm really committed to being of service, to helping other people. I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of speaking. I try to bring value to every interaction I have, whether it's just, getting my groceries and asking how the person bagging my groceries is doing, or, trying to help anyone I can. And I find that, it's that law of vibration thing. The more I do that, the more great things seem to come into my life.
How did a hot sauce come into your life? Because
Not,
I couldn't find a better transition than that.
yeah. Well, I've always been foodie. Probably why I was 40 pounds overweight. Um, my first book was called The Modern Gentleman: Cooking and Entertaining with Sean Kanan. Love hot sauce. And I started thinking, okay, I'd like to kind of get into the food industry. And I always, Paul Newman's one of my favorite actors. And I was incredibly inspired and still am by Newman's Own, which is his brand, where he gives 100% of his proceeds away to charity. Now, I don't do that yet because I'm still building this company. But my goal is to have Bad Boy Eats, which is the parent company of Bad Boy Hot Sauce, eventually become an engine that is going to uh, provide the financial wherewithal for me to really pursue a lot of philanthropic efforts. And, Bad Boy, Mike Barnes, Bad Boy Karate, Bad Boy Hot Sauce. It seemed like there was a good synergy there. And it's been really fun. It's really challenging learning a new business. There's a lot of things that I wish I knew first. You make mistakes. Hopefully you learn from them, but it's an adventure for sure.
I think that's a really good it feels like the pathways, going back to the vibration thing, Cobra Kai just wrapped,
Mhm.
the last 2 seasons you were in, um, and you're, like, completely embracing the bad boy theme, but you're, like, the nicest guy. So,
Oh, thank you.
how do you do that?
It's called fighting.
Now we know.
Um, Listen, I am incredibly grateful for being a part of the Karate Kid universe, the Cobra Kai universe. It is obviously had a tremendous impact on my life. Martial arts has always been an important part of my life since I was probably about 14, 15 years old. And the tenets of martial arts are something that I try to embody every day. Courage, honesty, humility, um, all of that. And I look at life or at least my life, is being very holistic. And everything that I do, even though it may seem like they're very different pursuits, they're all interconnected. And I don't know. You asked me about embracing the whole bad boy thing. I mean, I guess from a marketing point of view, it just makes good sense. I mean, you know, my third book, which was the first book in the Way of the Cobra series, called Way of the Cobra, I had been working on a personal development book, and it was originally going to be called Freeing David. Using the analogy of how did Michelangelo create David? Well, he stared and stared at the block of marble, and he chipped away everything that wasn't David until there was only David. And it was on its way to being what I think was a great book. And then I started thinking to myself, I'm part of this zeitgeist that's Cobra Kai. Why not take all this great information and basically, it's like putting a wrap on your car. It's the same car, but I put a sort of a wrap on it. And Cobra is an acronym. It's formed from the words character, optimization, balance, respect, and abundance. The chapters are divided into belts. So I take you from white belt to black belt, and I'm the sensei. And it was wildly successful. It's now in multiple languages. The sequel, which is called Welcome to the Kumite, very successful. And the latest book, um, um, Cobra Couples, Way of the Cobra Couples, which I co-authored with my wife, takes the philosophy and the strategies from the first two books and applies them to relationships, to finding the right person for you. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but um, in rebranding the original idea and making it palatable to a huge existing market of fans, it really turned out to be a wise thing to do, because otherwise I probably would have written this terrific book that, you know, 20 people would have read, half of them my family. And instead, it's been exposed to a very large international fan base.
I just love how you're just like embracing all of the things, but the purpose is to make people's lives better, which is why wouldn't that be anybody's purpose for anything,
Yeah,
right?
I think so too. I've been given an amazing platform. And, I think when I was younger, I used to always say, well, I'm nobody's role model. And I think that was some kind of an excuse that I used for, behavior that was self-destructive behavior, disempowering behavior. And once I got rid of that and I started living my life in accordance with the book that I wrote, which I was from when the book came out and while I was writing it, I don't want people to think that I wasn't. I started noticing a really weird phenomenon. People were asking me for advice. They were seeking my, you know, uh, input from my experiences. And it was really weird. I was like, I almost felt like I didn't have imposter syndrome, but I was like, this is weird, because I was not the guy that people were coming to and asking advice. And now it's something that happens on a daily basis around the world. And like you said, I embrace it. And I've had the opportunity and the privilege to help a lot of people. And it's my way of keeping myself accountable by staying kind of in the trenches.
And nourishing, we're going to bring it back to food, people's souls and nourishing people's bodies, they kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely. I've always felt that food is an amazing conduit to connection and even authenticity. And, authenticity is one of the greatest superpowers we all have. Each of us has our own unique individual authenticity that nobody else has. And, y- you know, when you're trying to emulate someone else or become someone else, it's kind of a fool's errand, because everything you need already exists within you. You just have to get in touch with it. Anyway, back to food though. you know you break bread with somebody and have a great meal. Authenticity tends to come out. You just walls get dropped, commonalities get brought to the forefront. And I've always recognized that food has that power. When I was in college, I didn't have enough money for taking girls out to fancy restaurants. Hi, tricks. And so I figured if I could cook them a really great meal, that was a pretty good way to at least get them to hang out with me. And so I started cooking when I was early on in college, and to this day, I still find it really therapeutic. You get the steam coming up, and it puts the music on, and it's just it's a way of getting very in touch and focusing on one thing and kind of shutting out the outside world and knowing that I'm going to make a great meal and get to share it with people I care about. So
Do you have a recipe that you love that you want to share that we could put in the recap?
I think the one I'm going to give you is from my book, The Modern Gentleman. It's called Pappardelle Gemelle, and gemelle means twins. And so in the book, each of the recipes is preceded by a little story. And the way that I came up with that meal, pappardelle gemelle, is I said that I woke up and I had two young ladies stay the evening, and they were waking up and they were both hungry, and so I looked in the cupboards and I had some pappardelle, which is kind of like a ribbon type pasta, and gemelle means twins, and so these girls were twins. And before you think that it was anything really salacious, it was my new twin stepdaughters, Annie and Julie, and they were hungry, and so I named it after them, Pappardelle Gemelle. And it's a twist on puttanesca, which has capers and olives, and is a very robust, delicious pasta sauce. And what I did was I married that with a bolognese, which is a very heavy ragu with, you can use lamb, you can use beef or even turkey if you want ground turkey. And I married the two together and they absolutely loved it. And so that went in the book.
I really love that lead into the story. So not just an actor and producer, also a storyteller.
Also a
Very
story. Well,
important.
I think at my heart, I'm a storyteller. That's what I am. And whether it's through my acting or through my writing or stand-up comedy, I love to entertain people and I love to tell stories.
What parts of your Jewish upbringing do you think you brought into all of the things that you do? Where did that impact come from?
I think there's two things about Judaism that I really like. One is that it's predicated on a very strong sense of justice. Um, and so I've always felt a pull to, you know, trying to do the right thing, to try and be just and fair. Um, and it's also predicated on knowledge. There's a very strong through line, I think, with Jews, especially parents and their children, always extolling the virtues of learning. And so I am a perpetual student. I studied Italian for 20 years. I've been studying Mandarin now for about 2 years, 2.5 years. I try and read as much as I can. And, it's kind of like people always ask me, what advice would you give a young actor? And I know I'm segueing here, but I always tell them, before you slip on the skin of another character, you need to be comfortable in your own skin. And the way that you do that is by achieving self-awareness. And one of the ways that you achieve self-awareness is you you grow your Rolodex of experiences. So I always say, study a martial art, study a foreign language, travel, read, see theater, see plays, listen to music, study psychology, talk to different people. And so as part of who I am as an actor, I'm always looking to expand my wheelhouse of knowledge. And I think that the genesis of that came from certainly from my parents, but also I think it comes from Judaism.
And that authenticity factor that you were
Mhm.
talking about just a few minutes ago, that's a hand in hand because you need to know yourself so you can be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's you always want to look internally when you're playing a role rather than having to manufacture and create an idea of what an experience is or what a person would be like. You always want to look inward first because those are your real experiences. They're ingrained in your DNA. And so the chances of you being able to use them authentically and effectively as an actor, I think are, it's a lot better odds than having to sort of extrapolate and come up with something.
I also feel like what you were talking about with martial arts,
Mhm.
in the learning, that really is a parallel to Judaism as well,
Well, I mean, yeah,
right?
I think martial arts extols the best virtues of most religions, when you take away, the artifice of religions and some of the things that people associate with the negativity of religions and get to the essence of them. Um, Martial arts was largely founded on, Buddhism and Hinduism, and there's a lot of good stuff there.
Well, little known Deb fact, I practiced Aikido for 9 years, so
Really?
yes.
Ah, right. Rubber. Yeah, Aikido was the first martial art I ever studied. I only studied it briefly, but that's amazing. Really cool.
Yeah, a friend said, "Oh, Dad, you have to come to this class with me." I had no idea what it was, and I continued, she did not.
Yeah.
Um, but I love the whole power of it. It feels very much in line with a lot of what you're saying. The basis of Aikido is you step aside and let people fall down. So
Yeah, and in a more, I don't know if it's a metaphor or an analogy, when you fight against the motion of the universe, that usually causes suffering and frustration. And when you learn to accept the energy and go with it, at least for me, I've found that life is a lot more harmonious. And I think ultimately it comes down to surrendering. Aikido in a lot of ways is a martial art of surrender. It's surrendering, you know, um, attacking forward and rather, embracing and then moving from there. And, when you learn that the only thing we can control in life uh, are our emotional responses to external stimuli. You know what I mean? And I always tell people when I'm speaking and coaching them, I say, if you think you're in control, go outside. Just look up at the sun for a second. Remember that it's a dying star that will someday become a neutron star and then a black hole, and it is going to literally shred the earth into pieces, devouring it. And there's no power other than God Almighty that's ever going to stop that. So, given that information, do you still think you're in control? And when you realize, and it's, and on a much less, I don't know, grandiose analogy, you know, whenever we seek to assert our will on other people, we get the exact opposite response. They recoil from us. Nobody likes to feel that they're having someone's will imposed upon them, which is a form of control. And when you let that stuff go, it goes back to what I said, the world comes to you. Another thing too, I think that, when you release yourself from the idea of I have to achieve this, and if I don't, my self-worth is diminished, or if I do get this thing, that it's going to somehow make me happy. Um, you become a happier person. One of the things I talk about with my wife in the book, Cobra Couples, is that I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan, but I think that Jerry Maguire did a massive amount of damage to people's psyche about relationships because none of us need someone to complete us. What we need somebody that facilitates an environment that allows us to be our authentic selves. And when you find that person, it's amazing. It's like a missing piece of the puzzle has been found. And to put it really simply, and I say this in the book too, the right one will make you and the wrong one will break you. And a lot of times people get caught up because things happen, good things and bad things, and the things that are good are often not as good as you think they are, and the things that are bad are not always as bad as you think they are. But a lot of times, things that ostensibly seem catastrophic with the expansion of time proved to be very beneficial. Like I was divorced 20 some years ago, and it was, for me, it was devastating. I saw it as an enormous failure and all sorts of other stuff. And had I known that really what that was doing was freeing me up to meet my wife, Michele, I wonder if I would have engaged in so much um, self-flagellation and unnecessary suffering. Now, I'm not saying that when you go through something, you don't want to emotionally process it. You want to shut it out. But again, you want to stay the middle path, you know? You don't want to, how many times have we heard about the person who wins the lottery and a year later they're broke and miserable? Well, how many times have we heard of someone that, God forbid, has gotten cancer and they beat it and look back on it, and the journey, they've said that was one of the most defining times of my life. And although I wouldn't wish it on anyone, I don't know that I would trade it away. And that's how I feel about when I had life-threatening surgery, doing Karate Kid 3, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but that was the moment where a part of my character that I didn't know existed was revealed. And so I don't think I would change that. Anyway, I know I was kind of digressing.
Well, let's wrap with food. So, what final food for thought do you want to share about ways in which meals and food and that love can really bring people together or make them better as humans?
We live in such a fractured world right now where it is so easy to find so many differences. And I think the one thing we probably can all agree on is, you know, every group has a food that's delicious. Maybe the Brits. Well, they have fish and chips. But the Brits and the Germans, no. But even they have great stuff. And the point is, if we look for commonalities, often we find that we are more alike than different for the most part. Look, obviously there are exclusions to that, but if we start by looking for what we share in common, and we all love food, and every culture has wonderful foods, and it's a great way of doing kind of a very quick cultural exchange, trying the foods of other cultures. Better yet, if you can do it with a person from that culture, you know, you see people's eyes light up when they talk about the food from their culture. I don't know what we have as Americans. We think it's hamburgers and hot dogs. They both come from Germany.
Well, I'll ask you, do you have a favorite Jewish food?
I love brisket. Um, I love kugel, but it's really fattening, so I don't eat it very often. And I'm gonna be. My wife thinks I'm such a weirdo. I like gefilte fish, and my great grandfather used to make his own horseradish. He would grind it and make his own. And I don't like to think what's in it. I don't like to think where it comes from. I don't like the gross jelly that it comes in. But once it's on my plate, I really like it. What other Jewish food? Latkes, of course, potato latkes. Um, what else? I don't know. Well, I mean, a corned beef sandwich. I mean, of course, who doesn't love Jewish deli food? I mean, Jewish deli food and real briny pickles. Um, yeah. So I unfortunately, Jewish food is not the healthiest, but it's delicious. Matzo ball soup, kreplach soup, but mushroom barley too. Mushroom barley is actually my favorite of the soups one would order at a Jewish deli.
We've got a feast based on all your favorites, and I like gefilte fish too, and I am not afraid to admit it, but I am also with you on the gross jelly stuff. What were
Yeah,
they
what's it
thinking?
about? Like, do we have to have that? I don't know.
Anyway, this has been so much fun chatting with you. Where can people learn more about you and your hot sauce and your books and everything?
Well, I'll give you the whole gratuitous pitch. You can get my hot sauce at badboyeats.com. We have 3 delicious flavors. There's Cobra Venom with the Carolina Reaper. There's Mango Madness with habanero and Indian mangoes. And there's Red Pepper Punch. My books are all available on Amazon. You can also get Way of the Cobra on Audible. You can check out my new TEDx. I'll give you a link afterwards, but you can just Google Sean Kanan TEDx. It'll come up. And I'm on Instagram. I keep my DMs on. It's Sean.Kanan. So come find me.
Awesome. Any final thoughts you want to share? You want to leave people with?
It's not the easiest time to be Jewish right now. And I think that we all need to be proud of being Jewish and show the world the very best qualities of what it means to be a Jew. And, I don't think it's ever easy to be a Jew, but it's a little more difficult now than it has been in a long time. And the Jews have always been resilient, tough people. And this is a time for us to come together and be the very best that we can be to each other and as an example to the world.
Wonderful final thought. Fabulous conversation. Thank you again, Sean
Thank
Kanan,
you.
for joining me. Thank you for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. A little bit off the beaten food path, but that's okay. We brought it back. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and or your favorite podcast platform. And if you go to jewishjournal.com/podcast, you can read the articles that go with each episode and get that fabulous recipe from Sean. And you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Be kind, be authentic, and put all those good vibrations out in the world. Until next time, bon appetit.